Welcome to the Getting Real with Hilary show, where ordinary heroes tell extraordinary stories during unique and never been heard before conversations with your host, Hilary Arno Burns. Hilary's unique listening and way of asking questions results in conversations that aren't usually talked about, so you can create the life that you really want but are afraid you can't really have. We are demonstrating the greatness in the human spirit and creating a world where we all reclaim our birthright of joy, happiness, purpose, and passion. Now, here's your host, Hilary Arno Burns. Welcome to the Getting Real with Hilary show, and today we have a very special guest. We have the author of, which you're not going to be able to see, a little bit, Living the Orgasmic Life. Yes, that's what it's about, folks. Xanet Pailet, a former healthcare attorney who's turned into a nationally recognized sex and intimacy educator, coach, and trauma practitioner. She's the best-selling author of this book, Living an Orgasmic Life. So don't miss this because it's going to be incredible. Woo! Welcome.
Thank you, Hilary. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I have to say the book, it was hard to read because I felt like I had so many issues, and I can't imagine that there's any one person that doesn't, given all the stuff we have learned about sex. And when you were giving your examples about when you were young,
Mm-hmm.
I know I have those, embarrassed. You want to hear it? I could start right now. So, all right, folks,
Okay.
this is called Getting Real with Hilary, and this is going to be very real. And when I started my YouTube channel in 2019, I said I would use myself as the human guinea pig for others to get real. So here we go. Embarrassing or not. When I was little, I was pretty little, and there were some boys next door, and I don't know how old it was, maybe 3. I mean, young enough to not know any better, right? And they wanted to see my thing, and they would show me theirs. Well, I didn't care about theirs, but of course I was a little people-pleasing girly, so I did what they said, and I showed them my vagina. And I had, do you remember Desitin?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had that on it, and they were like, ew, gross, disgusting.
Oh,
There you go.
yeah. All those stories of our childhood should be just like natural, normal kind of things. Just can be very triggering.
Yeah, and you don't tell anyone,
Right? Right?
just like automatic shame, like, oh my God, I have a bad one.
Yeah. Yeah. I got that. I'm sorry that happened to you.
After reading yours, and you put yours in a book, and if you wanna read about those, you can get the book. But that, even though I could say, oh, they were little, they didn't mean it, it's there. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there's other things too, but that was just one thing. There's also something that I can see. Oh, I know what it is. This one is easy. When my brothers and I, there were 5 kids, but at the time there were 2 and 2. I was the second daughter, and then I had 2 brothers, and we used to play this game where we would just run into the middle of the hallway, take a piece of clothing off, run back until we were naked, and then we would, I don't know, jump into one of their beds and whatever. But it was not a sexual thing at all. But all of a sudden, I wasn't allowed to play that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I didn't want to be a girl, because being a girl had me not be able to play.
Yeah. I it's funny because I don't know that I wrote about this in the book. Maybe I did. But I had a client, similar kind of thing. Like, I had a client who was very much a tomboy growing up, and she always used to take her shirt off because all the boys were taking their shirts off. And then one day her mother came home, maybe she was a little bit older, maybe she was like 9, right? Maybe starting to develop some breasts, or 10, and her mother told her she can't take her shirt off anymore. And that actually ended up causing a lot of issues for her around her own body image, and hating her breasts and hating that part of her body, kind of like what you said, like, I just want to be a boy so I can be naked and have, free in my body, right? Like somehow it's always okay for the boys to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I totally get that. And those are the type of, I call them sexual blueprints, right? Those are the messages and the experience that we have around body image, around sexuality in very early childhood that can have can, not always, but can have a very significant impact as we get older, and as we start to have a better sense of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, what we like about our body, what we hate about our body, why we do that, right? It's always fascinating when people, women typically, but I've worked with men as well with really significant body image issues, really, like, when you unpack deeply where that came from, it always comes from some sort of early childhood experience.
So, I mean, I could come up with more, my father, all of a sudden I couldn't be naked, same thing. But how do we I'm sure everybody has those because, I've heard of little kids, giving each other sucking on their penises because it feels good and they don't know any better. And then all of a sudden the mother is horrified and all of a sudden they're shameful.
Right.
How do you undo that? I think we almost have that.
Yeah, I think everybody has some kind of experience. I think the way, whether it actually impacts somebody in the long term versus whether they can just like kind of let it go depends a lot on, were they caught doing it and then shamed,
Oh.
right? So you were told not to do that. My client was told not to do that. I was caught, playing doctor with my best friend Josephine in first grade, and caught by her mother, and then punished by my mom, right? And then she moved away, and I figured it was because I was such a bad person, right? Had a very significant impact, on me. And so a lot of every kid, has the experience. Like, I think about, oh, this is going to so embarrass him if he ever heard it. But we talked about it all the time. My now, I don't know, 37-year-old son, but when he was little, he had this little friend, Rachel, and they put stickers on each other's bodies, right? And we came down to the basement once, or our housekeeper did, and they were like, had stickers all over their bodies, including like on their genitals and whatever. And we just kind of laughed at it and said, like, oh my God, you put stickers on each other's bodies. Like, maybe don't do that again. Or just like maybe put it on other parts of the bodies, right? Not making a big deal out of it and trying to normalize that this is just like, things that little kids do because they're curious, right? And they're creative, and, bodies are interesting. And look, your body is different than my body. Is really usually really changes how that impacts them or doesn't impact them, as they grow older.
And did that impact him or no? Because
No,
you
we teased him about it. We still
Oh.
tease him about it. Even talked about it at his wedding,
Wow.
but but he didn't really, impact him because it was done so innocently, right?
Mhm.
It was not like a big deal. Nobody shamed him. Our nanny didn't shame him. We just laughed at it and said, well, maybe you shouldn't do that,
Yeah.
just
Well,
do
I
arms and legs, like maybe keep your clothes on. Yeah.
I think, like, for the parents who do, like, you got punished, like, why, if when why would you get punished? You were innocent, but we don't get treated as if we're innocent.
Right. It's not
Probably because the parents have their own stuff about
totally
it.
like they're uncomfortable with it. My
Yeah.
mother is totally uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so, the same thing, right? Like, we like hit a child's hand when they touch themselves. Right. And, little kids touch themselves all the time. Again, they're curious. They, especially little boys, they touch their penis since they've been out of the womb, and very early on, they get these tiny little like erections, right? That does happen. And it feels good. So as they get older and they're more cognitive of it, right? They start to touch themselves more frequently. And so, do we hit their hand away or do we say like, hey, I know that feels really good, but that's something that it would be better if you did alone, in your room. That's not something that we do in public, right? And most of the time they also grow out of it. Like I think about my grandson who was like running around naked, for his whole like 4 years old, 5 years old, touching himself, and then he just grew out of it. It was like, oh, I don't do this anymore. But it also wasn't shamed about it. But it's also okay to give them some boundaries, right? That's important.
Right. Well, it's an interesting balance, right? Between boundaries and shaming. I mean, yeah. And I guess if you can, I don't know how a mother would make it not about her. Do you know what I mean? Like, like that would be my first reaction if I walked into a room and, do you know what I mean? What your mom walked into,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Again, it's how you treat it, right? And it's how you were socialized around it, which impacts your own comfort or discomfort, excuse me, or shame around, touching body parts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like there's a big embarrassment for me.
Yeah. Yeah, for a lot of people. Because of the way we were socialized, because we've been told it's not okay, right? It's,
Well, yeah, and the thing, I know it's in the book, women were taught, I guess it's the whore Madonna thing.
yes,
If you have sex, you're the whore,
right.
and
Before marriage,
yeah.
right? Or if you're not a virgin, right, then you become
But
the whore. And a lot of women are shaming other women, right? A lot of that shame comes woman to woman as well. That's what I've seen. That's been my experience in working with a lot of clients.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's so much. All right. Well, let's go back.
But I think the younger generation is doing a little bit of a better job on this. Like Generation X, Generation Y, they're much more open sexually at some level. At some level, I think I put this in the book, and it was in this book, or if it was in a blog article that, how we used to like, I don't know, we used to go shopping, and I used to go to Loman's in New York.
Yeah.
Place my mom took me.
Yeah.
And there was just like a big open dressing room and women just got naked, right?
Yeah.
Do we have any of that anymore? Absolutely not. Everybody's in their own stalls. And what I was reading was that even in gyms, spas, whatever you call them, fitness centers, right? Equinoxes, where there used to be like this open dressing room and every women would just like get dressed. Like there's lots of little closets that you go into to get dressed and undressed, right? I saw that at some spa I was in I don't know where it was.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, whoa, this is different, and so that also like it creates stigma around your body, right? And it creates, this negative conditioning. Like it's not okay for other women to see your body. It's not okay to expose yourself that way. I don't think that's very healthy. That's going on in our country right now either.
Well, we still have the big dressing room at the gym.
Good. I'm glad you do.
But I don't see, after COVID, I don't think many people changed there anyway, because you just got so used to doing stuff at home.
Right.
But interesting, yeah. So, okay. Can we go back?
We can go anywhere.
All right. So I know you were, do you want me to? So she was a healthcare attorney, married, right? And 2 kids.
Mm-hmm. Living in a sexless marriage for 2 decades. Yeah. That's my background story. That's why I feel like I'm so empathetic and aware of the challenges that women have who are sexually shut down sexually repressed, who've been traumatized, and that couples have who are living in sexless marriages. Like I have lived all of those experiences. And I know from where that comes. Like I know what it feels like to have those experiences and how painful and it is and lonely.
Okay, sex to you was painful.
Well, for me personally, physically, sex was painful.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. I had had that experience.
Okay, so and you talked a lot about in the book about women not wanting sex. In my marriage, it was him who didn't want it.
Yes.
And so that wasn't something I talked about because, again, must have been my fault until I got a little more educated, but I blame myself. I didn't talk about it.
Right.
But there were other people who I think have that as well. It's not always the woman who doesn't want it.
Oh, no, definitely. Like, you know, that the Living an Orgasmic Life book was really written for women around sexual healing. My new book, The Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, is really written for couples where we really look at things like mismatched desire, but Living an Orgasmic Life was really like, what are all the things that block women? You know, enjoying sex. And certainly when your partner doesn't enjoy sex or doesn't desire you or has the lower libido, that is going to block you as well from wanting to have sex, right? Because how many times can you get rejected without just starting to feel guilty, feel like there's something wrong with me, feeling like I'm not attractive, I'm not good enough? Like those are all very, very, very real. And I definitely 100% agree, because I've seen all of it in my office, right? And on my retreats that often, you know, maybe I think more typically it's men who have a higher libido often, but not always. There's definitely a percentage in relationships and marriages where the woman is the one who's really desiring sex and has a lower libido. And often in those cases, the man has something going on emotionally in the background as well that's blocking them from connection and intimacy, right? So it goes, you know, it goes both ways. There's not a specific gender with difference.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay. So when you were a lawyer, going back, did you ever think you'd be doing this?
Oh my God. No. I mean, I loved health. I've always loved health. And so like, I'm still in the health field, obviously. Right. And, you know, honestly, like as a, in college, you know, I was like a sexual health counselor, even though I wasn't having sex and hated sex or was uncomfortable for me. I was a sexual health counselor. Right. So I definitely always had my foot in the door, if you will. I always had an interest in it. But I didn't really know what to do with it. And since I felt so sexually broken, there was no way that I felt like it wasn't even like, there wasn't even such a thing. I mean, maybe there were sex therapists at the time, right? And I was interested in psychology. But the school that I went to in Stony Brook, their psychology department was very behavioral rat based. Like they did a lot of that kind of stuff. Just such a turnoff for me. Totally, right? So it's such a turnoff for me that I decided instead to, pursue what was I major of? Well, I did a little bit of everything. I basically had a bachelor's of arts, but I was really interested in politics. Still really interested. I'm a political junkie, for better or for worse. Probably for worse, but so that led me, into the law. And then the firm I was with had a healthcare attorney. So I started doing work with them. And that's sort of how I went through that journey. But I think like if I was good in math and science, I would have gone into medicine. And again, that was like one of those things that I never even really considered, like, because I was just so bad, or I thought I was so bad at it, right? The whole way. And we have STEM programs for girls. Right. Because again, at that time, we were just, medicine is for, my brother was a doctor, right? Like medicine is for men. That was just the socialization. I felt the messages that we got, but I was always, always interested in the body and interested in healthcare. Uh,
Mm.
and psychology. So, but being a lawyer was something my mother wanted me to do because, that was how I was brought up and was acceptable and seemed interesting at the time.
How long did you do it? You did it for
Not that
wow.
long. I was a lawyer for about 4 or 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Practicing law, but I did healthcare antitrust litigation. So I was representing this case actually ended up going to the Supreme Court. I represented certified nurse anesthetists who were suing anesthesiologists out in Oregon or Washington, I can't remember the state, for restraint in practice because they wouldn't let them have independent practice, right? Now, most CRNAs and when you have anesthesia, mostly it's done by a CRNA under supervision sometimes. But so I was super interested in that. And from there, I was in Washington, D.C. And so my next step was to work for not-for-profit healthcare organizations representing healthcare professionals. And I ended up doing lobbying on Capitol Hill and, was involved in a couple of important pieces of legislation. And then I ran some of these big organizations, but I was always in healthcare.
Wow.
That was always my passion. Even for my own consulting firm, it was the healthcare consulting firm, right? That was my interest.
Oh.
Yeah.
So then what, I know it was in the book, but just for the audience, what had you, I know you were doubting your marriage at some point, but what had you open up to this sex stuff?
Well, I mean, I think essentially, I was in this sexless marriage. Sex was, as I talk about in my book, sex was painful for me. I had a condition called vaginismus, was really induced from anxiety, starting from some shaming that happened in childhood, an incident which I wrote about in my book. And
Is that because I had never heard of that, and it sounded like a bunch of people have it or had it.
It's very common. A lot of women have vaginismus. So what it actually is, the vagina is just a muscle like any other muscle. And it can contract and just close down because of tension in the pelvic floor, anxiety, right? And making sex and any type of penetration, sometimes even any type of touch, extremely painful. And it's really typically almost always, there's a very small percentage of cases where it's physiological, but almost always it's emotional. It's psychological. It's due to trauma. It's due to, the body in this case, my body was just trying to protect me because it knew that, intercourse was painful for me. Penetration was painful for me. So why would it allow that to continue to happen, right? And so the body, just like it's a muscle, it contracts, just like it could totally expand when you have a baby, right? The pelvic floor is kind of amazing that way, and the vagina is too, because it opens up and closes so much. And so,
but was it
was
painful because of this?
Yes, it was painful because of the trauma.
So it was the trauma of when you were little and you were with your friend,
right? And with my dog.
And the dog, yeah.
Right, exactly. But yeah, so
Did someone catch you with your dog, or you just knew you had done it? No.
No one caught me, but not that long ago, I had been caught, right? And so, I knew it was wrong. I was already an anxious kid. I was sure that my mom would find out, right? I had this it was like, it feels really amazing, and I know it's really bad. It feels really amazing, and I know it's really bad, right? And so, there was a way in which like pleasure and anxiety started to compound to that, right? I started to connect pleasure with anxiety. So I couldn't have any pleasure in my body. There's too much anxiety associated with it. And when you have a lot of anxiety and shame around that, and the first time I had sex, it hurt and just kept on hurting. It just said, never felt better, right?
And you had kids and everything.
And I had kids and everything, right? Exactly, I did.
So for someone like, because I had never heard of this, but let's just say I had that and I
Yeah,
went to the doctor, they're not, from what I read about in your book, they're not going to go, "Oh, you must have trauma and anxiety here. Let's send you to Xanet."
right. They're
They're
going to
gonna,
send you to a pelvic floor therapist, and the pelvic. And I went through that
yeah,
process, and that was also for me a nightmare. No, I have some great pelvic floor therapists that I've been using here, so there are some amazing ones. But like what they try to do is like give you dilators to stretch the muscles and to try to relax the pelvic floor. But if there's emotional stuff behind it, which almost always there is, it's really not going to work very well most of the time. And then you're just going to be re traumatized and re triggered by feeling like you have to force, some dildo, no matter what size it is, inside of a vagina when you're just not ready to do it. Right.
so
Um, so,
and these, like, like with me or with you, we were not like sexually abused, or there was no, if I wasn't more aware and hadn't done all these exercises and stuff at different times and recognized all these things, I would think I'm fine. I don't know. There's nothing traumatic that happened to me.
right.
You know what I mean? This stuff is underneath a lot of layers.
A lot
Like,
of layers, right? A lot
so,
of layers, yes. So
um,
the
yeah,
layers, look, I was in a marriage where every time we tried to have sex, I got married at 24, I had my second kid by 28. We were done with sex by like 31. I was pretty much done at that point, right? But every time in that period of time when we tried to have sex, there was drama, it was painful, there were
yeah.
tears. Like, who needed that, right? It was very easy for me just to shut down.
And what did he think?
I don't know because we didn't talk about it. And I asked him, he's a good guy. He's a good
Yeah.
man. He was a great dad. Um, like when we were separating, I'm like, did you ever cheat on me? Did you ever think about doing that? And he was like, oh, no. So I don't even know because we never, that's part of it, right? We never had the conversation. We didn't have the skills to have the conversation. We didn't have the emotional closeness to be able to have that conversation either. But I was, easily done at 31. And I just took all of my sexual energy and I poured it into my job, my children, my company, my work, my children. And, I had a huge passion for theater. And so I started producing theater as well in New York. Uh,
Wow. So you were busy. You were busy.
right. I was super busy and I created my own life with my own friends. And we really were like we were like roommates. We were like roommates living under the same house, raising children. That's really, what that was like.
So I know you probably don't know because you don't talk to him, but like what he would think about what you do now, given that.
Who knows? We've had conversations about it, and yeah, he's aware.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So let's see. We have a couple minutes before the commercial break. So there you were, sexless marriage, painful. How does that now shift to orgasmic life and pain-free and free to enjoy? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. No, I
I
get it.
can't, even though I read the book, I'm still like,
The
how?
transition,
Yeah.
yeah. So the transition was, I think this is very common for couples when your children leave the nest. You start, or at least you even start thinking about it way before your children leave the nest. Like I had a 7-year plan to leave this marriage. Honestly, swear to God, I did, um, because I just knew I wasn't happy, and he wasn't happy, and this wasn't working out.
Yeah.
I didn't want to like upset the apple cart for so many different reasons. But when you get to that stage, which is where I think this is a turning point or an inflection point for a lot of couples, when you get to that stage of like, oh, we're going to be empty nesters soon, right? Then I think for me, there was like time and freedom to be able to say, okay, now I can think about like, what is this next chapter of my life going to be like? And one of the parts of that chapter was like, I got to deal with this sex thing, right? Like I know how unhappy I am, and I know how lonely I feel emotionally. And I know that I am, I'm a relationship person. I like being in relationships with people. So I know there's got to be more people ahead of me, but I got to deal with the sex thing, because I can't just go on like, the dating sites in New York City and say like, I'm this awesome woman, I'm smart, I'm successful, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty, I got a good body and I just hate sex. Would you date me? Like, that just wasn't going to fly,
Yeah.
you know? So I knew I had to actually I had to deal with it, but I didn't have the capacity to deal with it until I left the marriage.
All right. So on that note, we'll find out what happens after our commercial break, and we'll get the rest of the story then. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Hey friends, it's Hilary, and I want to share something that genuinely shifted how I see modern and contemporary art, and honestly, how I see the world. If you've ever felt like modern or contemporary art just wasn't for you, like you were supposed to understand it before you could enjoy it, you're not alone. And that's exactly what Robin Jameson turns upside down. Through innovative tours, talks, trainings, and educational programs, Robin doesn't explain art or tell you what to think. She guides you into actually experiencing it, personally, directly, and in a way that is powerful, moving, and even life-altering. She's also the author of The Magic of Modern Art, How to Love Modern and Contemporary Art. And what she shows people is this: you already have an innate affinity for all types of art. Through Robin's work, you are awakened to more than just a new, confident, and joyful relationship with art. You begin to see everything with fresh eyes, feeling more curious, open, and alive in the world. If you're looking to create a powerful, memorable experience for yourself, museum, organization, or community, visit magicofmodernart.com or email Robin, ROBYN, at magicofmodernart.com and discover what's possible when art and life truly come alive. So you go from painful sex, no sex, to...
Well, it didn't happen overnight.
I know. But still,
it was a process.
How did it? I mean, obviously, you had to get it to the point where it wasn't painful anymore.
Right. Well, so for me, like the doorway to my sexuality, and I want to be clear with all of you that this may or may not work for you, right? Like there's a lot of different ways to heal around sexual trauma. And this was sexual trauma. It wasn't sexual abuse trauma, but it was sexual trauma. I also had medical trauma also associated with sex as well. So there were a lot of pieces around this, right? But for me, the doorway ended up being the world of Tantra and sacred sexuality. And it was just something that literally just kind of fell in my lap. It's not like I was looking for it, but of course, something or someone was guiding me all along, right? That has always been the case in my life.
Wow.
And so I just met this man I was dating, and he had just went to this Tantra workshop, and he knew that sex was hard for me. So we had a nice relationship. We didn't have sex, but we talked, we were just starting out. And he's a physician. And he
was this the Washington or the New York?
This is New York.
New York. Okay.
This is how the book starts. And he was like, I came back from this workshop. He called me up. It was like, I got to take you out to dinner. I've got to tell you about this amazing experience I have. I think it's going to change your life, kind of thing. And I want to like offer you a night of goddess worship. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. We talked about it a little bit, but okay. I'm open to it because it sounds like he would create a very safe container. And he did create a very safe container for me. And that was like my doorway into like, oh, sex can be something else. Sex doesn't even have to involve touch of the genitals. It can just be like touching and feeling into energy and having a lot of conversations around what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and consent, and being in a place where he never even took his pants off. So I wasn't ever worried about that it was going to become sexual. And it was a very different experience for me than I had ever had in my entire life, because there was really no focus so much on genitals. That was not what was going on. But
What was he doing?
he was touching me. He was teaching me some breathing techniques, which was super helpful to relax my body, to move the energy around. We went super slow. This thing lasted for 3 or 4 hours. And he set the stage, right? Like I walked into I think it was his apartment, my apartment, I think his apartment. I walked into his apartment and he had a bath for me. This is what they teach you at the Tantra workshop. He had a bath set for me with and roses on the bed and essential and some massage oil. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a beautiful container where I felt adored and worshiped, which was very different than any other type of sexual experience I had ever had before. And it wasn't genitally focused. And that felt very safe for me.
That's like a miracle, right?
It's kind of a miracle that, like I said, there was something or something
Wow.
guiding me. And we ended up like dating, continuing to date. And then I went to a Tantra workshop because he's like, you got to go to a Tantra workshop. And I did a couple of months later. And then things started to shift for me as well, because even as I was dating him, my body was starting to relax and to trust and to open up, right? And I actually felt that, physically happening when we were together.
And did that eliminate the vaginismus?
It did. It started to be like, oh, I can be touched and actually have some pleasure in my body. I mean, it was very, very slow. I don't even think we had intercourse. It was very, very slow, but
trust. It seems like
the trust, the trust and the safety and the honoring of my process and of, the tantric path of going slow and, allowing all of your senses to come into play and really feeling the energetic connection. And, I always have felt energy, but I didn't know what it was. And this actually gave me a lexicon of like, oh, what's happening in my body, right? And so that was also very powerful for me of like, oh, I can breathe and I can feel energy moving through my body. And he was able to feel energy. So we had, that is a tantric path of using like sexual energy just to connect with each other without necessarily having a lot of genital contact or penetration. Obviously you can do that as well, but
it
was a very it worked very well for me personally.
So the energy, I'm just wondering, it's not like when you're in the desire mode, right?
No, it's a different type of energy. It's really like, when you think about it, well, it is. I mean, when you think about it, we're all made out of energy, right? Like everything in the world is energy, and there's a magnetic field around us and in us, right? And so what, part of Tantra is very much focused on using movement, using breath, touch, breath, and movement in order to connect with your sexual energy. So a lot of tantric rituals and practices are using breathing and moving your body, moving your pelvis, breathing down into your pelvis. to start to connect with the sexual energy. So it's really starting to feel that energy in your body. And yes, that is part of erotic energy and desire, but you can come at it in different ways.
So
That's
is
why
it?
this is not the only path at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is this have to do with? I don't know. Some people say chakras. Some people say
Yes, so
chakras.
this is
Is
definitely
this opening them?
yes, activating the chakras, especially the lower chakras, the sexual chakras, the second, third, first, second, and third chakras. This is activating it. This is what we're doing in Tantra. We're working through these, energy channels in order to connect with the sexual energy and then move it all the way, if you will, up to your top of your head and have more, Tantra is a connection with, it means to weave. That's the definition that I use, but it means to weave. So think about weaving like our physical body, our energetic bodies in connection, perhaps with some spiritual, energy as well. So we're weaving all of this together. That's why it goes very often, the rituals, the practices are very slow. There's a lot of eye gazing and eye connection because that is, the eyes are the windows to the soul, right? And so you're really looking for that, emotional connection as well. But again, not everybody's doorway into healing their sexuality. It happened to be mine. But I've worked with a lot of women where we don't go anywhere near that.
So if somebody was having trouble or not open, they knew they were closed or something, what would you recommend? Or it would be individual?
Well, I think it depends on, really identifying like what's happening. Where is it coming from, right? So if it's coming from some sort of sexual trauma, which often it is,
Mm-hmm.
most likely, I would recommend let's work on that trauma piece, right? Let's understand what's happening. Let's see what your body does when you think about sex. Let's work on expanding your nervous system and helping you learn how to regulate your nervous system. And then eventually being able to gently release, some of that trauma, right? That's what we do in somatic experience, any type of trauma work.
Mm-hmm.
But I also often will work with women on just starting to connect with their body, right? Like starting to like touch themselves, looking at like body image issues, helping them understand that yes, like your breasts are going to start drooping and your belly's going to get bigger when you done with pregnancy, and that might be hard to lose, but it's still a beautiful body, right? So there's a lot of different ways to help people come back in contact with their body and their pleasure and their desire. The biggest thing I would say is do something if you want to, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're somebody who wants to heal and you want to enjoy sex again and you're frustrated that it's messing up your life, then do something. Don't do nothing because it's not going to get better on its own. It never does, right?
Yeah. So the thing that's coming up for me is, back, I don't know when it was, 80s or 90s, like, when we were in college, we had sex, we worried about getting pregnant.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you had to worry about AIDS and dying. That was 80s actually.
Yeah.
And now it's like, there's that, to me, it's like, just not worth it, It's not worth the risk.
The sex or the dating? Both.
I think I think I've gotten that way with dating. I mean, I got divorced, like 11 years ago, and it's very difficult
Right.
to date. Or I just don't. Yeah, so there's something about it. It's like, it's just not worth the hassle. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know where that comes from because I used to enjoy it and stuff like that. But
Yeah, and I think that, everybody gets to make a choice. about how they want to live their life and what's important and a priority for them. I mean, I never force anything on anyone. My general philosophy, however, is that our sexuality is the center of our creativity and our power. And when we're disconnected from our sexuality, we're disempowered around some of that, right? And, and that doesn't mean that you have to be having sex with another person, right? You can keep yourself very sexually fulfilled on your own if that's how you want to go about it as well. But, I think it's obviously a very individual opinion, a decision, sorry, not opinion, an individual decision for women. And I think as a lot of women age and go through menopause and or even postmenopausal, as the hormones shift and change as well, there is, an obvious drop in libido, and our arousal just becomes different. It becomes more responsive and less spontaneous. And if you don't have a partner, then that arousal and desire is not there as easily, right? And so
Well,
I
also,
totally understand that.
have you been through menopause yet?
I have.
So when I did have sex after, it was painful.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what had happened. I mean, no one talks about it. And
And that's
you know,
a reality for, a lot of women.
yeah.
And nowadays, I would say in this decade, there's a lot more emphasis on getting women on HRT therapy, right? Which I actually started just a couple of years ago, and I went through menopause at 48. And that actually helps tremendously, right? Yes, the tissues get drier if they're not well lubricated, but estrogen and testosterone internal cream helps. There's a lot more modalities and methods and options for women who are perimenopausal and menopausal that prevents it from becoming painful, right? So that is, reality. I mean, I had the best sex of my life when I was past menopause, right? That's when this happened. I was 50 years old when all of this,
Really?
yes, when all of this started. So it is not at all a foregone conclusion. I think for a lot of women, were you married at the time when you were going through menopause? Okay. So I think for a lot of women who were married in long-term relationships, and their sex life has only been so anyway, right? And they're not getting a lot of pleasure. Maybe it's boring. They're not able to ask for what they want. They don't even know what they want. They're doing the same thing over and over again. Women get bored very easily. We know that, right? Menopause becomes the perfect excuse to stop having sex. And that's true. But I know it's not true, Hilary, because I've seen so many postmenopausal women in second marriages, or even third marriages, where when they meet that person, like they're like horny as hell, right? So it's not like it dies. It doesn't die. It just goes underground, but you can have access to it at any time under the right conditions.
Well, I think, in your book, you talk about the different styles. And I think if people don't know that there's different styles, eyes open, eyes closed, the role playing, all that, once they can understand that, they can work with each other as opposed to just going,
Yeah, I mean,
or, like
yeah,
just not dealing with it. But I think you have to be able to talk about it.
yeah,
I don't think
absolutely.
we were raised that way.
Totally. And my new book, the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, is all about like what are the conditions that couples need, right? And obviously it's all about like emotional safety and trust and being able to repair. But then there's the whole sexual component, like communication and being able to understand we have different erotic styles and how do we integrate those with each other, right? And so that's very important information. And again, that's one of the reasons why couples struggle in their sex life, because they're not able to understand that, you might be like more sensual and I might be more kinky, and we don't know how to integrate those two pieces where both of our needs get met. And so, a good sex life is about curiosity and creativity.
And I think being able to have those conversations, I would think, I'm just thinking that one would need to get over the embarrassment and the shame and the blame and thinking it's me, thinking it's them. You know what I mean? And coming at it as a team where nobody's wrong.
Right.
And understanding that each person is different but not wrong. You know what I mean? If you think they should be like you, that's gonna be a problem.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think that's probably with anything, not just sex, but with anything,
Yeah.
being able to discuss it in an open way where no one's to blame. And you, like you said, curiosity would almost displace the shame and embarrassment.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think
Tell me more. Tell me more. Right?
Tell me more.
Yes.
People get really caught up in that place of like, oh, if I, how many times have, and it's so interesting to me because, I'm very sex positive. I've had a lot of different experiences and most of them have been really great. And, so often like a couple will come in and one of the partners will have some sort of like desire or fantasy that they think is so out there. And I'm like, really? But for them it is, right?
Yeah.
Even like, it's like, can I tell my partner that I want to have a threesome? I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty common fantasy, but, not so unusual. And yet there's so much like, oh, what are they going to think about me? Are they going to think that I'm not attracted to them? You know what I'm saying? Like
all that crap,
all of that stuff, all of that self-judgment that comes in, like all of those pieces are part of why it's harder for couples to have really honest, authentic conversations with each other, which also goes to, do they feel emotionally safe with each other? Is there true intimacy there?
Yeah. It reminds me, I did this whole thing for a conference on saying what can't be said, saying the things you're afraid to say.
Yeah.
And there's so much fear, but once you say it, the shame goes away.
Yeah.
You get free. But I think people are locked inside of that.
Totally.
Not even aware, maybe. But yeah, if you could say, hey, I want a threesome, or hey, I want this.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people ask me what's one of the methods that you can use to start to get over, if you will, your shame, the answer to that is you have to start talking about it and sharing it, because that begins to normalize it, right? When you start to hear from other people like, oh, I've had that experience as well. Oh my God, that means I'm not so weird.
Right.
I'm not broken, because look,
Not
there's
the
all
only
these
one.
other
Yeah.
people who have had that experience. And so, normalizing shame, as Brene Brown so brilliantly talks about, right, is critical to be able to start to not let it run your life, if you will.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We're actually on our last 30 seconds here. What would you like to, we'll have how they find you and your books in the notes. What would you like to leave people with?
I would like to leave everybody with that pleasure is your birthright. So you're absolutely entitled to experience pleasure in all different parts of your life, not just sexually. But if you're not experiencing pleasure in your sex life, then I think you owe it to yourself to do something about it.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for shedding the light on something that we don't always talk about. And thank you for, being willing and courageous to do this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, everyone. Go chase that pleasure, right?
Thank you for watching this episode. I started getting real with Hilary when I discovered that I was a people-pleasing, pleasant phony and wanted to be more of my real self. We can grow together if you will like the show, subscribe to my channel, and share this episode with your friends and family so that we can have a world that's more real.